So if I asked you how many pensions you've got, would you be able to tell me? Would you know where those pensions are and who the providers are? You see, the thing is, as we change careers and jobs, those pensions don't move with us. They stay where they are. And this can become a massive problem the longer you work, because you could easily end up, when you get to retirement, having 10, 15, maybe even 20 pensions. And actually knowing where they are and the values of those makes it very difficult to track. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about pension consolidation, whether it's worth doing, the things to really think about, the red flags, and how you can actually find old pensions if you're actually unsure where they are. But if you're new here, my name's Ben, I'm a chartered financial planner, and my aim is to help as many people as possible around their personal finances and their retirement planning. Okay, so let's actually first talk about what pension consolidation is, because the chances are you've probably clicked on this video and you've heard people talk about pension consolidation, but you're maybe not sure what that actually means. And simply what it means is that over the course of your life, you're likely to have multiple pensions because each time you go to a new employer, you're going to start a new pension. And as I say, these don't move with you as and when you move jobs. They stay where they are. So simply what pension consolidation means is taking all your previous workplace pensions and moving them into one consolidated pension. Now, there are many reasons why you may wish to consolidate your pensions, and I'll come on to this later in the video. But first, let's actually work out, okay, if I don't know where those pensions are, where do I actually find information on that, and how can I track them down? Now, the first way of doing this is actually using the government's pension tracing service. And what this allows you to do is you can log on and type in your previous employer's name, and that'll actually show you who that pension provider is now. You can then contact them to find the current valuation of that pension. Now, the second way you can look to do this is using old payslips, P60s, or perhaps you've even got an old letter from your pension provider. And again, this should give you some information on who that pension provider is and how you can contact them to get information on that pension. And the third way is to actually contact your old employer's HR department. And again, they will be able to provide you with the details of that pension provider so you can contact them to find out information on your pension. Okay, so why should you think about consolidating your pensions? Now, the first and most obvious one is because, as I say, the more times you change jobs throughout your career, you're going to have pensions here, there, and everywhere. And keeping track of those can be very, very difficult. So if instead you get into the habit of each time you change jobs, actually looking at that pension and working out if you should transfer and consolidate it, that makes it a lot easier to know where your pension is and how much you've got in your pension. Now, the second reason you may want to consolidate is something called fees. Now, typically for each pension you've got, you are going to be paying a fee. And this is usually a percentage based on the amount you've got in that pension. Now, typically these fees can range anywhere between 0.25% to 1.25%, but some may be even higher than this. Now, on screen, I've actually shown an example of a £200,000 pension pot based on a 0.25% fee versus a 1% fee. Now, you might think that a 0.75% difference doesn't sound like a huge amount, but you can see on screen the difference this can make over the course of 20 years. So a £200,000 pension pot where you're paying a 1% fee is going to grow to about £440,000. Whereas a £200,000 pension pot where you're paying a 0.25% fee is going to grow to about £500,000. So it's a £60,000 difference. And this is nothing to do with investments or anything like that. This is simply being aware of how much you're paying for your pension and making the decision to actually transfer or consolidate that to a more cost-effective pension. Now, the third reason you may want to consolidate is something called retirement options. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of this in this video because, quite frankly, there's way too much to unpack. But simply what this means is that some pensions, particularly older style ones, may be quite limited in terms of how and when you can access your pension when you retire. So by transferring or consolidating that pension, that may open up a lot more retirement options for you. Okay, let's now move on to what I call pension consolidation red flags. Now, what I mean by this is there are certain guarantees that some old pensions might have. And if you do decide to transfer or consolidate that pension, that guarantee is going to be lost. Now, the first is something called a defined benefit or a final salary pension. Now, typically with these pensions, they guarantee you an income from when you retire for the rest of your life. So regardless of market conditions, that pension will pay you the same amount year in, year out for the rest of your life. Now, if you decide to transfer this pension, that guarantee is lost. So it's really important you check this before making any decisions on whether you to transfer that pension or not. Now, the second is something called guaranteed annuity rates. And simply what this means is that, again, some older style pensions may actually provide you with a higher level of income than what you could get now if you purchased an annuity. So based on a £100,000 pension pot, if you bought an annuity today based on today's market rates, you're probably going to get somewhere around £5,000 a year in income in retirement. However, you might have a guaranteed annuity rate with a previous provider, which might be 8%. So instead of that £5,000 a year, that's actually going to pay you £8,000 a year. And again, if you decide to transfer this pension, you're going to lose that guaranteed annuity rate. So you are effectively giving up £3,000 a year by transferring that pension. So again, this is one of the red flags you really want to be checking and actually understanding around your pensions before making any decisions on whether you should transfer or consolidate that pension. Now, the third and final red flag is protected tax-free cash. Now, typically with most pensions, you can access 25% of that pension value tax-free, with the remainder being taxable depending on your other income. However, again, some older style pensions offer a higher rate of tax-free cash. So instead of that 25% tax-free, you could get 30 or 35% tax-free. So what that means is that if you decide to transfer that pension away from the current provider, you're going to be paying more tax on that pension than you otherwise would have. Okay, so now you've found your old pensions, you've got some information, you've looked to see what fees you're paying and if there are any of those red flags there. You're probably thinking now, okay, well, how do I actually consolidate my pension? Now, the first thing you'll need to do is actually decide who your new pension provider is going to be. Now, for most people, they may just choose their current workplace pension, but if you are going down a route of choosing your own personal pension, there are plenty of different providers out there. Now, the most common ones are people like AJ Bell, Hargreaves Lansdown, or Interactive Investor. But again, there are so many companies out there that provide personal pensions that it's really important you're doing your own research before making any decisions on which provider to use. So once you've chosen your new provider, you will need to provide them with the information of your current providers. So that's going to be who the provider is and what the value of that pension is. Once they've got that information, they will probably ask you to complete some forms. Now, this probably is going to be done online, but they may actually ask you to complete a paper form as well. And again, this is simply providing them with the information and you giving them authority to contact those pension providers on your behalf. Now, from that moment onwards, all the action is with your new pension provider. So they will go away, contact your pension providers and say, this person wants to transfer their pension from you to us. Now, the process probably takes anywhere between 2 to 8 weeks, depending on who your new provider is and who your existing providers are. Now, as and when a transfer is complete, it's really important to actually make sure that money's invested, because where your pensions are now, with your previous employer's workplace pensions, for example, you are likely having no say in how that money's invested. Whereas if you've decided to open your new own personal pension, you are deciding how that pension is invested. So as and when that money comes across from your previous pension providers to your new pension provider, it's really important you're actually looking at that money and how it's invested. Okay, so now you've found where your pensions are, you've checked what fees you're paying, you've checked if there's any red flags, and you've made a decision around whether to consolidate that pension or not. So you've probably got a good handle on how much you've got in your pension. Now you're probably thinking, okay, well, how much do I actually need to retire? So what I would suggest you do is check out my free retirement calculator, and you can find a link to this in the description below. It's take you about 60 seconds to complete because it only asks you 6 questions, and it will show you if you are on track to retire when you want with the income you want. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video, hope you got some value from it. If you did, please do consider subscribing because I'll be posting a lot more videos just like this on personal finance and retirement planning in the future, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.